One of the things I see in business so often these days, and actually have done for quite some time, is how a lot of people in business, and even people that have been running very, very successful businesses for a number of years, are so focused on short-term metrics. And look, there's no right or wrong way of doing this, I guess. And again, the people that have been in business and have been successful over a number of years have obviously got a formula that works for them. But more and more now, I guess, I'm looking at everything from a long-term perspective. And I think a lot of what happens when people go into business is they do look at those short-term goals. That they look at, okay, they're short, and the short-term goals sometimes are realistic. Like, I'm in 6 months' time, I'm going to be making 100 grand a month or some horse shit like that. And it's amazing how often that happens from people that I'm speaking to. And I think it's something that you really need to think about when you're going into business, and not pie in the sky shit like that. It's bring it back down to earth and actually be a little bit realistic about what these goals look like. And look, there's people talk about BHAGs, and I've got my own ones, but again, they're based on long-term goals. It's not something where I look at it and go, okay, well, and again, I've never done this in my business. One of the things I speak about quite a lot when it comes to this subject is how, for a business that is traditionally a sales type business, I have completely from day one, it's not even something that I've done recently, from day one of starting the business, I refuse to have a monthly or quarterly or even an annual sales target for the business. And it's not, it hasn't come about, and part of the rebuttal I get to that is, oh, well, that's because you were shit at hitting sales targets. And other than the role I was in before I started my current business, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'd always been very successful in sales over the previous 17 years to starting the business. And I would say, as far as hitting sales targets, I would have been somewhere between 70 and 80% over my career in that area. So it wasn't coming from somebody that didn't like sales targets because he couldn't hit them. It's like, kids that don't like grades at school, your A, B, and C in their report cards because they're always getting shit grades, and so it's not that. The whole reason that I got rid of sales targets entirely from the business was because I wanted to make sure that it didn't matter what time of the month it was, my clients were going to get the offer that was right for them. So what traditionally happens in sales businesses, and look, I've been a part of it, I've done it a million times, I've seen it 10 million times, is you get to the end of the month, or the 27th of the month, let's say, and you've got a $10,000 a month target, and you go, okay, shit, I've got 3 or 4 days left to go, I've got $2,500 left to hit my target. What the hell do I need to do to hit my target? Because what happens when you don't hit your target, you get to have a lovely conversation with the sales manager that, quite frankly, unless they're a sadistic sales manager, the sales manager doesn't enjoy having those conversations either, partly because if they miss their target for the entire team, they get to have that conversation with their manager as well. So you have that conversation with the sales manager, and you don't hit your bonus, you don't get commissions, you don't get paid that extra amount that so many people are in sales to get. And so the focus becomes, what have I got to do to hit my sales target, not what's the best outcome for the client. And I've seen it so many times where people they're either overly pushy, and again, I've lost deals because of this in my career. I've lost deals because I got to the 27th or 28th of the month, and a client that I probably would have been able to sign quite easily a week later, I've pushed and pushed and pushed to try and get them in for this month to hit my target and not have the bullshit conversation with the sales manager. And I've ended up having them tell me to go fuck myself because I was being a pushy little shit. And so that it's not good for anybody. So it's not good for the business. It's not good for the customers. It's not good for the salespeople. It's like, who does it benefit to have a sales target in the business? If you, and my outlook on it, and especially now having done this for for over 3 years, I look at my sales figures now versus what they would have been based on my sales target, and I'm obliterating those sales numbers, those targets. So, you don't need a sales target in there to motivate people. You don't need a sales target in there to be able to gauge the success of your business. If you do, then I think you've got a few other issues within the business that probably need addressing more than do I have a sales target or my sales reps aren't hitting the target. And look, this whole podcast started out about the short-term versus long-term mindset, and it's kind of gone more into sales targets, and I'll bring it back into the mindset thing, but I will do another podcast separately about sales targets because, as you can probably tell, it's something that I'm fairly passionate about, and there's a mountain of data that even I've been able to put together over the last few years as to why sales targets actually hurt a business rather than help it, and it breeds a culture that's actually not ideal, let's say. And again, this is my opinion. Other people, and I know in talking to other sales organizations in telco and outside of telco, they think I'm a fucking idiot for not having sales targets. And, how can you do this? And how can you, it's a way of closing the deal if you know that you can say to a client that, look, I've got until the end of the month to get this on board and you'll get these extra credits and this and that, and you're doing it to hit yourself. Like, to me, it's all horseshit, but it works for some people. But again, it goes back to that short-term versus long-term mindset. And I think when you're setting up a business, it's important to understand that, okay, yes, you do need some short-term goals, because at the end of the day, if you're starting a business from scratch and you want that business, whether you're doing it as a side hustle or your main source of income straight up, that business, essentially, you want it to get to a stage where it's supporting your lifestyle. You kind of need it to, especially if you're doing it as your main business. If it's a side hustle, you can kind of get away with it a little bit longer. But if you're looking at starting a business to jump feet first in, this is going to be my business, this is what's going to support my family, pay my bills, and give me a holiday at the end of the year, then from that point of view, you do need a few short-term goals. I accept that, because you need to go, okay, well, I need to build the business to a point where it can sustain my family. I appreciate that. What I don't agree with is everybody having short-term goals based on, I need to make X amount of dollars this month, and then when you hit that, your next goal is, okay, next month I want to make this money or this money or this money. My goals, I do have a revenue figure as a goal for my business, but I haven't set it up in such a way where it's based on this has to be done by X date. That just doesn't exist for me. If I have a client that wants to come on today, being the 3rd of the month, versus they want to come on the 15th of the month, the 30th of the month, the 3rd of next month, I don't give a shit. I'm happy to work around their parameters, and it's not that I let the client lead the conversation in that way. It's more because I know sales managers are probably sitting there cringing at this, going, you just give all the control to the client. And it's not even that. We still do things under a structure, but I'm not going to lose a deal because I've been a pushy pain in the ass trying to get a client to sign up with me based on my arbitrary targets rather than what's in the best interest of the client. And at the same time, the reverse, right? So I completely straight out refuse to chase the client's ass. And again, speaking to people in sales and in telco and just other sales, they think that's ludicrous. So it happened a couple of months ago where I had a meeting with a client and he brought in his business partner and it was all good to go. We walked out of that meeting. He said, look, send me the paperwork, send me the invoice, we'll get it all going, and away we go. I sent him the paperwork and the invoice, and a couple of days later I hadn't heard anything back, which I thought was a little bit strange. So I just checked in with him and I said, look, just wanted to make sure you've got the documentation, this and that. And he said, yeah, look, my business partner's decided he wants to look at, this in a little more detail and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine, no issue. Is there anything I can help with? No, we'll come back to you. And I have not, since that day, spoken to that client again. My outlook is, if this guy's legit and he actually wants to do business with me, he'll come back to me. He's got the paperwork there. He's got the invoice. He'll come back to me. If he's not legit, then he won't. And why am I going to chase my client, or potential, and they're not my client, why am I going to chase them to try and convince somebody to do business with me when I can spend all of that time that I was wasting on them speaking to people that actually want to do business with me? I have zero desire to do business with anybody who doesn't want to do business with me. And when somebody says to me, send me the paperwork, and then 2 days later says, oh, we're looking at other, then that for me is a big red flag saying, we don't want to do business with you, fuck off. So off I fuck. And at the same time, I don't want to do business with somebody that is of that mindset as well. So for me, that's a win-win. He didn't have to do business with me. I didn't have to do business with him. He can go off and do his own thing and find somebody else to deal with. I can go off and do my own thing and find somebody else to deal with. We don't ever have to speak again. And I'm perfectly happy with that. But you speak to most people in sales roles and they think that's absolutely insane. And could I have pushed that guy and got the deal? 100%. Like 100,000%. I could have pushed that guy and I guarantee you I would have gotten that deal. But I have zero interest in pushing anybody to do business with me. So again, it's short-term versus short-term versus long-term mindset around this sort of stuff, where when you're going into business, work out what it is that you want. Are you more focused on short-term metrics? And if you are, that's fine. I don't care. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of business colleagues that run their businesses purely based on short-term. They don't give two fucks about long-term goals or long-term mindset. They could care less. Whereas I'm the opposite. All of my stuff's long-term. All of it. So just understanding it. A lot of it comes back to self-awareness. There's nothing wrong with having short-term mentality. Just understand that that's what you're doing and make sure that when you're dealing with your clients that they understand where you're coming from. Don't go to one of your clients and say, I'm going to look after you for the next 3 years, like every fucking telco company out there tells them. And then as soon as the paperwork's signed, no, fuck off, you can go and speak to customer service now, I'm on to my next deal. If you're going to have a short-term mindset, then make sure that your client understands that if they do come on board with you, that they're going to have to deal with customer. Like it depends on the business, right? But in telco, that they will have to deal with customer service. And as long as they're comfortable with that and you're comfortable with that and everybody's on the same page, then you can all move forward together and have a great relationship. And when you call them in 2 years' time or 3 years' time when their contract's up and want to re-sign them, they're prepared for it and they know that they're not going to have spoken to you in the previous couple of years. Where people get caught is they sell to the client that they've got this long-term mindset that they're going to have this relationship, and if you've got any issues, call me. I want to make sure that you're looked after and this and that. And the first time the client calls, oh, I can't help with that, you have to call customer service. And that's where customers get fucking pissed off. And I don't blame them. And that's why I've done the complete opposite with my business, where not only do I tell them to call me, I actually take it on and run with it and make sure that when they call me, that their shit gets fixed. I spend 70 to 80% of my week working with existing clients, making sure they're happy, fixing issues that come up, whatever it may be. I spend 20 to 30% of my week at most, dealing with potential new business. I have not, and in a typically traditional sales business, where I'm smashing the numbers that I did when I was a full-time salesperson. So anybody that tells me that sales targets are necessary and short-term goals are necessary, my answer to that is bullshit. My business is proof that they're not. But if you are going to have those short-term goals and operate your business in that way, then absolutely fine and more power to you, but don't bullshit the fucking clients. Because not only will you lose those clients, and not have the opportunity to work with them again, they'll tell other people, and they'll tell other people, and they'll tell other people. So your business, there's businesses, again, in the telco space, especially here in Perth. Like, Perth is such an insular city compared to Sydney, where I'm from. It's unbelievable. Everybody knows everybody, and you do the wrong thing by one. Like, there's a telco company, I'm not going to obviously name them for obvious reasons, but there's a telco company over here that everybody that, not everybody, probably 80% of the people that I speak to that have mentioned them have had a negative experience. And if that's the way you want to run your business and burn people and move on, then you can do it. It's up to you how you want to run your fucking business, but I wouldn't advise it. So again, it's long-term versus short-term mentality. Work out which one you are. Both are perfectly fine. Just make sure that you are actually authentic to what you believe in. If you believe in short-term mentality first, be authentic to it. If you believe in the long-term mentality, be authentic to it. They're both perfectly fine. You can run successful businesses doing it either way, but just make sure that you're authentic to what you are. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. And that's where a lot of businesses get caught, a lot of people get caught when they're starting a business, is that they think it's going to be something that they're not, and they think they're going to be able to bullshit to clients and get away with it for a prolonged period of time, and that does not happen. So, again, look, I would love to hear people's feedback on this. I know that even in speaking to other business owners, I know that there's a lot of very different opinions on this topic. But I was asked by a business colleague to speak about it because we had been discussing mindset, and they said, look, it may be a good episode for your podcast to actually speak about this. So, look, would love to get some feedback. Hit me up on social media, leave some questions below, and I'd love to talk to you about it further if you do have an opinion on this. But otherwise, I hope you got a great deal of value out of this, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers.